welcome to another episode of the QNAMY Show. And today's guest is John Vargas, who is full of incredible wisdom. He has a Grablives podcast. He's a Kambo international practitioner, and he was in the Forest Service, LAFD Firefighter. He's currently with the LA Fire Department, fighting fires for the last 8 years. Paramedic for 10 years. He's a past life regressionist, and he practices at a great system he set up called the Human Garage. So we'll tap into all of that. But first responder I've had on the show. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to dive in with you. You've got just such a cool, unique background. And what's really interesting about you that I was like, I have to talk to you, is you've crossed the bridge of plant medicine and you're still actively serving as a firefighter. And so you have such a unique perspective, because I was awoken, if you can call it that, by somebody who had been both a military veteran and a firefighter at the Austin Fire Department. And that really opened up my eyes to I didn't even realize, like, firefighters, first responders in general, just like deal with so much trauma on a daily basis. Probably, arguably, I'm going to put it out there, they probably deal with more trauma than military veterans do. The bulk of military veterans. The bulk of military veterans don't experience combat. The bulk of military veterans are in a fire exchange, right? But you guys are literally dealing every single day with some of the most traumatic events, deaths, disease, homelessness, addiction, right? People literally firing at you, house fires, structure fire. You guys are getting it every single day, every single shift. So I would venture to say, I'll put a wager out there, you guys are probably the most unfortunate career profession out there in terms of like just the level of trauma that you face. And I looked up some statistics before having you on the show, because I was just so curious, to see if there was any validation to my hunch on that front. And I'm going to guess that these statistics are really not a true reflection of like the gravity of the situation within the first responder community, because you guys are still serving. A lot of you don't report these issues because you have to be psychologically cleared for duty. And so dare you say that you're struggling in one way, shape, or form, you may lose the opportunity to be within the role that you're in. And so I'm curious, I'm going to read some of these statistics out. I just want to see what you think. But the prevalence of mental health issues, at least publicly reported on at least the Googles of the world, 30% of first responders develop mental health conditions such as depression and post-traumatic stress disorder, compared to 20% in the general population. And then suicide, first responders are more likely to die by suicide than in the line of duty, which is wild. For example, a fire department is 3 times more likely to lose a firefighter to suicide than to a death in the line of duty. And then trauma, over 80% of first responders report experiencing trauma while in the line of duty. And then PTSD, 37% of first responders have PTSD symptoms. I mean, these are crazy numbers, like absolutely crazy numbers. But I think it's underrepresented. What do you think?
Oh, for sure. Like, without a doubt, I think there's also the idea with men's mental health, because it's a predominant male career. I think that's changing with the diversity in it. But without a doubt, I think men are afraid to even speak out that they do have a problem until they're suffering, and most of it is suffering in silence. And until, someone's drinking themselves to death, or they're dealing with chronic pain and dealing with, things after you retire. A lot of members don't even make it past 5 years after retirement because they get cancer, and all these different things. And so I think part of it is to really understand what trauma is too. I think it's very subjective, because, I was just explaining to you about like our dog attacking me and my fiance, and for me, it didn't affect me, but it affected my fiance, to where now she can't be around large dogs. So it is subjective. What is something that our eyes have seen and our hearts have felt that is subjective, what we internalize inside of us. So I think there has to be an idea or a concept, what we can kind of reference what trauma really is. And I think, I forget who had mentioned it, but, the way trauma was explained to me was that it's something that you're severing from the true essence of who you are and the way you have internalized that. Something that you have given your power away, or something that you've allowed into your system, into your consciousness, that has made its home. So I think that's a really good way to start. It's really tough because I don't ever like to compare between, veterans and police officers and firefighters. We're all in service together. I don't like to discriminate either of those fields, but it takes a large, great, abundant awareness to realize like this is a real epidemic and a crisis that's happening kind of in our country.
Yeah, it's definitely an epidemic. It's definitely a crisis. And I think most importantly is just how we're responding to it, which I think is the real crisis, because I think we're always going to face, that's just the nature of life, is we're always going to face lows. We're always going to have highs, right? We're always going to go through the contrast of life and experience these things, but it's the response to it that I think is the pandemic. And what I mean by that is, how are we as a society treating or creating space for people who are constantly burdened by these traumatic events? Right now, the process is to relieve them of their duty, put them on medications. For some, it might be checking them into an inpatient treatment center, right, where they're given more medications. They're required to go to talk therapy and sit with a psychotherapist of some kind. And a lot of those results are not favorable. A lot of those things are temporary masks or turn into lifelong numbing. And for a lot of service members and first responders, that can turn into things like addiction. It can turn into sleep issues where they're taking things like Ambien or melatonin every single night, and they're turning to alcohol or other drugs to deal, just to mask, just to cope, right? That to turn off the voices in their head so they can get some sleep. And obviously, as you probably know, there's also other issues too, like domestic violence in the home because of anger issues and things that pop up like that. These are really, really horrible byproducts of trauma, just based on the way that the Western society treats it. And so you have done something that's really rare. And I think also a revival of our ancient practice this is not new stuff. You're basically just bringing to life a practice that's exists for hundreds of thousands of years, which is these beautiful medicines, these natural entheogenic plant medicines that are able to help be a bridge just to heal and reframe some of these traumas and truly heal them at the core level instead of just masking them, where it's done safely, in a healthy way, where it's able to shift the perspective. And so I want to just talk about some of the things that you've done and now that you offer as a service and a gateway for others. I know there's a lot, but we'll just start with maybe Kambo. What is Kambo and how do you use it as a healing practice today?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. I really would like to emphasize that Kambo saved my life. The way I came across this path is I was really struggling with a head injury I got at work. This was like my 5th concussion. And the way I hit my head is that I hit my head like 10 or 12 years ago. And when I hit my head again, it was the same exact spot. So it just disrupted a lot of scar tissue. It disrupted my nervous system. And the events leading up to kind of where I hit my head was a lot of toxic behavior. So looking back on a big bird's eye view of how I came across all this shit, right? Because I was never in my life would I see myself sitting in this chair telling you about my experience with Kambo, right? But I was just, an alcoholic, drinking for 15 plus years, every single day on my off shifts. That's just the brutal honesty to it. Just being just really afraid of commitment and just not really honoring women, really. And I was just being stupid and hard-headed and stubborn. And so it had to take for me to hit my head to come to that realization. And so as I was working through this concussion and dealing with the symptoms, I was really, really suffering with nervous system dysregulation to where I was waking up in the middle of night with just hot sweats, and my heart rate was at like 120 in the middle of the night. And I was doing that for maybe like 3 months, until I started seeing an acupuncturist who was helping me with that. And then, I was dating Haley, who's my fiance, and she was doing Kambo. And she had gone through her own yoga teacher training, and her mentor was doing Kambo. And so they started doing Kambo together. Haley was addicted to cocaine, and Kambo kicked her cocaine addiction within a month or two. And so she told me to go do Kambo with her, and I was like, well, what is it? And she's like, well, you're going to go into a room and this guy's going to put this medicine on your skin and you're going to throw up in a bucket for 40 minutes.
Sounds fun.
I was like, I'm not doing that, and it came to a point where I started having panic attacks. This concussion affected my behavioral capacity to not have administrative functions anymore. And so I couldn't go back to work. And emotionally, I was just having anxiety. I've never dealt with anxiety my whole life. And I started having just these, catatonic states where I couldn't move, and I would break down and I would have panic attacks, So I had this panic attack one time and I was like, fuck it. Haley, let's just go do Kambo. And so we went to go do Kambo, and I was super afraid I was going to shit my pants and all this stuff. Right. And it was just fear, and I didn't really understand what Kambo was until I went in the room, and next to me was an 8-year-old boy doing Kambo. And I was like, okay, if this little 8-year-old can do this shit, I can do it. And so I did Kambo, and kind of fast forward, it was an amazing experience. It transformed my concussion. It reversed all my symptoms within about 8 to 9 sessions. And it really started to heal me. Not only did it start to heal me on a physical level, but it actually took me to an emotional level where I started to face some emotional blocks that I was holding, particularly my abandonment with my mother, betrayal with my dad. And it began to be more of a closing of a chapter with some of these things. And after I did my whole process of working with Kambo, I did the training. And so I became a Kambo practitioner because I was like, man, if I went through this and I was just really struggling, I could use this to help other people, So I do serve Kambo now, and I've been serving it for about 3 years, and it's an amazing medicine. It's legal in the United States. It's non-psychoactive, but it is also considered an entheogen because it allows us to heal ourselves. I always tell people, I was like, hey man, I'm not doing anything for you. I'm just putting the medicine on. You're doing the work yourself. You really are. And if you've ever done Kambo, that that's the truth. You're sitting with yourself, and it's a very challenging experience, and you're able to work through it. You just rid yourself of all your toxins, all your filth. And for some reason, nature has just provided us this medicine to just sit in our own disgusting filth in order for us to heal. And you got to kind of grab onto the rails, while you're in that experience. But really profound. I think I've seen, people reverse a lot of addiction issues, alcoholism, meth addictions. I've seen it reverse HIV, Lyme disease, cancer, and just all of the above. A lot of infertility issues. I had a really good friend. His fiance at the time was struggling with 5 miscarriages, and then after one Kambo session, I was able to work her through what the emotional wound was underneath, and she was able to have a child after. So pretty amazing results from the medicine. And it is treatment based, meaning not everything is a magic bullet per se, but if you do the work and you stick to it, you can find some really amazing results. And what I found is through my process was traumatic brain injury. I became an advocate for, brain trauma, and there's not much out there that can really treat brain trauma. And this medicine seems to be a really profound medicine to help people who are just at a lot of dead ends with the treatments out there for what it can do, And I really found that it rewires the nervous system within 30 seconds to a minute. And it did it for myself. And after it did it that one time, I really felt there was a huge shift in my body and my nervous system. And I think it's been really profound because I've helped a lot of people with it, and talking to other practitioners, even ex-football players and other veterans who nothing has helped them. Kambo seemed to be really effective for brain trauma. So I've gone through my whole gambit of being an advocate per se, because man, if you've ever had brain trauma and you've dealt with it, you really feel like there's no hope, so yeah, that's kind of like a small, I guess, snippet on what Kambo has done for me and what I've seen it do for other people. It's tough because there's so much to it.
Yeah, there's there's so much to unpack in that, but a good friend of mine, because I'm just learning about Kambo myself. I just sat with Kambo for my first time a week ago, 2 weeks ago almost, and it was a really, really challenging experience. And on the surface, especially how you describe it, right? You get these burn marks put on your body. You get the medicine. It's a frog poison that goes right on your wounds that are created, and then you puke within 30 seconds to a minute. You're puking your guts out for as you said, up to 40 minutes, and it's a violent experience with your body for sure. It's the best way I can describe it. And so on the surface, it sounds like there's not a lot going on, but what's really happening is this beautiful medicine is just being distributed all over your body. And Heather Mack, who's somebody that has come on my show pretty recently, she described it to me as nature's vaccine, and that it does so much for our body. It teaches our body how to heal itself again. Which is what she left me with. So I'm so fascinated about it in general. I mean, I'm only a week out, so I haven't truly experienced all of the results of what it can do yet. And I know I'm going to sit with it a couple more times, but the first time is the hardest. But just in general, plant medicines, what's so interesting about them is for those that are hopeless, that feel they've tried everything, like all of the Western stuff, the beautiful thing about plant medicines in general, anything entheogenic, is that it does restore that faith. And it seems like this is the true stuff, the real stuff that actually like moves the needle for some of these big traumas.
Yeah. There's a really powerful book. I have it right here. It's called Kambo, Iboga, Ayahuasca by Giovanni Lattanzi, right? And so that book is really profound and explaining what Kambo is. And that gentleman, he kind of explains his journey with healing himself. And what happened is he was doing ayahuasca for like 10 years or so and wasn't getting like the healing he needed in his biological body, and because he had something wrong with his gut and he couldn't figure out what it was. So what happened was he found Kambo, because Kambo's used to pair up with ayahuasca and also Iboga. So he did Kambo and started to feel the healing properties from what Kambo offered, because it heals things at a cellular level in your biological body. So he felt like it was like an 85, 90 percentile with his healing, with his medicine. And so he was like, man, this is really powerful. And then towards the end of that, after he's done Kambo a good number of times, he still had like this like 10%, like just something missing, and then he found Iboga. And so Iboga is what actually healed him fully. And so he talks about his Iboga experience, and what he found was that in the medicine of Iboga, it took him through his bloodline, and he started to understand that there is a parasite in his body that was passed down from his bloodline, and it removed it from his gut and whatever it was. And then he was completely healed from that, whatever it was. And so it's a really interesting story, right? Because we kind of like treat things on the surface, and sometimes these medicines take us to the spirit realm or other planes of consciousness to heal ourselves. And sometimes there's something we cannot do that these medicines can. And that's what's really profound about entheogenic medicines, because they can do other things and show you like where it comes from, and so that's a really interesting perspective, right? And, I kind of felt ass backwards into ayahuasca. I was not looking for it, and met the gentleman who was serving Kambo, or serving ayahuasca. And he asked me, hey, do you want to do ayahuasca? And I was like, what the hell is that? And then I started working with that medicine, and it started to heal my head as well. So combined with that, those two medicines, it actually started to heal my physical brain, and it started to heal some of the symptoms I was having, my nervous system as well. And so it was also paired with that. And then I had to face myself and those experiences, and face the truth of the other, karmic experiences that I had created in my life, and then the traumas I had to face. And it was not easy, but I had to work through that. And after I worked through my traumas, I had began to learn teachings with the medicine. And so they started teaching me about my life, and I started to learn, like, through universal law of how to really exemplify my actions, my behaviors, how I can become a better man and show up for my family, how I can show up for others in this career. And it was really, really powerful the way I became a student now with the medicine, because these medicines had a spirit to them. And I began to really gain this beautiful relationship, and it really transformed my life. And then outside the medicine was like, okay, now you got to show up with these teachings and really embody them. And that was the hard part.
Yeah. I just want to circle back to something you said at the beginning of the show, where we were talking about just the manliness, this macho environment that exists within the first responder community, the military community, et cetera. It's a very male dominated space. Men are also at the highest risk at risk for ending their lives. And, there's this air about these male dominated spaces where it's like, you have to be this macho guy. You're not allowed to show your emotion. You're preyed upon. You guys are kicking each other, in the junk, et cetera, to make sure that, there's this macho spirit that exists, which has its place and it has its purpose, and that's wonderful. But when it comes to mental health, there's this massive problem, this soft white underbelly, if you will, of it's the kink in the chain, right? It's the thing that really is crippling the community of the military veteran and first responder community that we need to address, that we need to lean in on. And so tell me a little bit about that experience for you, where you're in this environment. You've been in this environment a long time.
Yeah.
You're in LA, which arguably is one of the more challenging places in the country to be in a first responder role. We know you're rocking the traditional firefighter stash, right? You are the ultimate firefighter. And so tell me a little bit about what that was like for you to start leaning into healing some of your traumas and the beautiful work that you did. But how did you balance those two things of maintaining that environment at work, but also being able to lean in and do the beautiful healing work that you needed to do to be your best self?
Yeah, I think in order to heal, we need understanding underneath it all. And I think I did have that understanding, but there's still, it takes time, through integration and to really get the missing pieces still. So I hope that answers some of your question, to just go back on like my experiences. I had to face my traumas, right? And some of them were pretty severe. That I had to face. And most of I would say actually all of my trauma was never from like the calls I've been on. It was from, my past childhood experiences and a younger adult life where someone had done me wrong and I internalized them. And so one of them was actually from a captain who emotionally abused me. And that was one thing I had to release inside this really beautiful purge in the medicine that really showed me like what not to be like as a leader. But I also gave my power away to that person. I didn't stand up for myself, and I had to understand that. And what happened is I had this insurmountable amount of gratitude for that person to show me what not to be like, which is really powerful in that essence of like living in the heart and like having gratitude for that. How amazing was that? But I think in this field, I think there's a really huge insurmountable fear towards homosexuality to be soft. And this field of work with masculinity. And it has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with being kind and being soft. And I think my greatest teacher with that is the 10-year-old girl that lives in my house who I have to talk to and be soft with. I cannot come home after a 24-hour shift and come to her and talk to her like I talk to my guys at the station. So I see my teachers in life being everywhere in every circumstance in my life. And so she's taught me that, but that lets me be soft. And that actually has more power than this macho performance that shows no mercy. It actually shows true power to learn the balance between the two. And as a true divine masculine to step in his power, it is being the protector, and also showing up as being the supporter, but also learning to have this capacity, the emotional intelligence with the feminine, and being able to hold the hand for the feminine to fully support, as you're the foundation for the feminine to ignite her power off of yourself. And I've only found that through rigidity in my own relationship. And I realized, okay, I'm doing this the wrong way. Okay, the woman actually has more power than I do. And all I'm doing is just needing to support her to ignite her power. And so I think we just lost touch with the true essence of who we are as humans, really. And I think the medicines have taught me that. They've taught me the true form of how I'm showing up in my life. And, that lesson actually came from directly from the medicine of ayahuasca. And the spirit of that medicine really cranked me and showed me what I was doing, and it wasn't working, to the point where it made me be fearful. If I act this way, it's not going to serve me very well. It's going to break down my family, and my life's going to be a mess. I'm going to be alone, basically. And I was like, okay, there's some stuff I got to do, and I got to show up differently. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I couldn't have said that better myself. And it just so perfectly segued into even just a journey that I had where I was living in this really masculine energy.
Mm-hmm.
I'd spent 16 years in the military, very defensive, argumentative, anger, like all of these masculine traits. And I was wondering why I was isolated and alone. And it's because I was pushing everybody around me away because I was way too much in my masculine. I had this really horrible inability to balance feminine and masculine, and to the point where like I didn't want to be around other women. Like it was really bizarre. Like I had this aversion to it. And when I sat with ayahuasca, very similarly, it was this beautiful lesson of balancing masculine and feminine, and how I needed to shift more into my left side of my body, which is the feminine side. And I got shown this beautiful vision of on my right side, it was this beautiful bright white light, like the sky with, the sun and clouds and this beautiful day that you could see at a beach or something. And then on this left side, it was the night. And I was so terrified of the darkness. I didn't want to let the darkness into the vision. And there were two oceans crashing up against each other. And in my vision, and the medicine was telling me, you need to let the darkness in. And that terrified me. For me, that was like the wall I had built, the anger I had accumulated, the defense mechanisms I'd set up. It was like, what are you talking about? Let the darkness in. That's crazy. What a crazy idea. And then finally it was like, nope, relax and let it happen. Like let the darkness come in. So I did. So I allowed the darkness into the light, and they combined. And when they combined, it turned into the most beautiful, magical night sky with all of the stars lit up, diamond lights, stars. And it was just the most beautiful scene ever. And it was teaching me about this beautiful balancing act that you have to honor the shadow side. You have to honor the darkness as well as honor the light, because when they mix together, that's where the balancing it comes in your life. And so, it's teaching me to speak with grace and not to be so defensive, and to be more in my feminine energy, and to embrace women and community of women, and to acknowledge that I have two incredibly beautiful sides. And if I'm in an environment that is creating what could be anger, I can choose. I don't have to just live in that masculine state of just auto reaction. So I love that you brought up this beautiful balancing act of being in divine masculine or divine feminine, having that be a beautiful balancing act, because as you so perfectly put, like you can be a warrior, but it's really important that you're a peaceful warrior, and that know that's where the true strength comes from.
Yeah, my original beginning of my spiritual awakening started years ago, like 2012, and I read this powerful book called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, and that a book written by Dan Millman, and that's what started me kind of on this conscious level, and that's why my path kind of had this kind of rude awakening, is because I already knew the path and I didn't want to go there. And so like I've always kind of instilled myself into, Zen Buddhism, and like I knew this stuff, and I just didn't want to fully take the dive and take the plunge, And what happened was I ended up getting dragged into that path because there was a need for, my path to really be fully, I guess, discipline into what I'm doing now, really, and helping others and kind of being the light into how to, be your truest form of who you are, and empowering people because of the suffering I've been through, And I think The shadow is pretty interesting because, like Haley's my fiance, and have been shadow workers. We started in the shadows. It's pretty interesting because now we're kind of coming into the light, and we've always almost been addicted to the suffering, and we've had to let go of that and to fully integrate the light within us. But first we have to integrate the shadow, which is ourselves. We create our own archetypes of demons within us, and we have to face that sooner or later. And so I've had to face mine and been really truthful with, what suffering have I been causing myself? And I think the medicines do show that. And, I think we talked about before, it was like, these are master plants. Master plants, meaning they're the most powerful plants on this planet. And so we must come into our own form of mastery if you're willing to step into this work. And if you're not ready, then you're in for a rude awakening, and you will not be able to have the capacity to move forward because you've not fully developed your own devotion to yourself. And it really takes that part in your own efforts. If you do that part, the medicine will do the rest. And I've had some really crazy, profound experiences in the medicine where, it's using sound frequencies and really strange, bizarre rewiring of my brain, and rewiring of my matrix of who I am in my healing process. It removed, programmings from, since I was a child with religion, that didn't serve me, with self-masticating myself with guilt, sin. It removed just like these things that were instilled on me that I had no power over, at a younger age. And, it really transformed my being and even to like my DNA. It was crazy how much I was able to see what this medicine was doing beyond my complete understanding, And I think we definitely have to fully respect what these medicines offer by offering ourselves with the fullest devotion, like I had mentioned, and it comes down to like your diet, to your thoughts. And man, it's just been really, really crazy to see the blessings that come after that, because the medicine works outside the medicine. And I started seeing my life transform without me doing anything, without lifting a finger. People would exit my life. Just toxic people that I didn't want to face, they just left. And different experiences died out and opened up. This podcast, the podcast equipment that I have, everything just fell into my lap because I was shedding the old that needed to go. And then so new things made space for new things to come in. That makes sense.
Yeah. And just dying to kind of touch on the subject of like Western medicine as we know it right now. Like, let's say that you experience something traumatic at work and, you have to do it the regular way, the Western medicine way, which currently today is, go see a therapist and maybe be put on like a hold of duty and maybe be given medications. Like, how would you describe plant medicine be as something healing or supportive to your clearing out work of that trauma versus like the Western current process that's in place today? Like, how do those two experiences compare from your perspective?
Oh man. So I've been a paramedic for like 10 plus years. So it's like, I've seen the way that the system works. It's designed like it's a business, and I take the same people over and over to the hospital. It's like, it doesn't work. It's a system. It's designed to keep you sick. And I've always known that, as I would just see the ruralness to it, and especially with the lockdown and COVID, like it just, you could just really watch it and really understand what's going on. And I think medicine is something where you're supported to do your own healing. Essentially, you have to do your own healing. And essentially, we are the medicine. And so if you can kind of grasp that idea, there's no magic pill that's going to heal you. There's nothing outside of yourself that's going to heal you. You have to heal yourself. And these medicines are just a mirror. They are not a magic bullet. You have to do your own healing. And they will push you to the edge to see what you're doing to yourself, or what capacity are you choosing the power of choice to make your own world of karmic filth, I guess, or dig yourself a karmic hole. It'll show you that. And so you get to have the power of choice to decide what you want. And so that's what's really amazing. So if you start making those right decisions and you start following suit with the algorithm, then you start getting the blessings from what the medicines can offer. And that's when you start getting what the medicines can do, right? And I'm talking about that guy who just had like that parasite removed, right? Like that's something we cannot do ourselves. And he would have never found that had it not been for the powerful medicine of Iboga. And so that's the beautiful thing is understanding what medicine is, right? Like I always tell people like family is medicine, you know, and that you hold the medicine, you are the medicine. And so you have to redefine what medicine is, you know, because of whatever starts filling your cup up is medicine. You know, whatever's emptying your cup or keeping your symptoms at the same level, that's not a medicine. I'm sorry. It's just it's a medication. That's something that's keeping something at bay.
Yeah, like a mask, if you will. One of the things that I found so profound about doing plant medicine work, working with entheogenic medicines, is the perspective shift just in terms of like, what is fill in the blank teaching me? Where now I view everything as an observer, you know, to try to understand what is the lesson that I'm supposed to learn by experiencing it. So as an example, I live in Los Angeles. When I drive in traffic, I talk about this all the time because for me, it's the measure of how I'm doing. You know, if I'm having somebody cut me off, how am I responding to it? And I always will now pause, not always, I used to react negatively, but now I pause and I'm like, what is this teaching me? And the big lessons that I'm learning right now is patience, and it's teaching me forgiveness, and it's teaching me that, you know, to be going with the flow, to lift up my feet and put them in the canoe of life and just go with the flow. And so doing that work and observing those lessons has finally got me to a state of happiness where I'm able to be in the moment, whatever the moment is, with whoever it is, in whatever environment I'm in, and still be happy no matter what's going on. Having that perspective shift of, you know, this person in front of the line at the grocery store who's being horrible to this cash register attendant, instead of me judging them or, you know, maybe involving myself in the drama, et cetera, I can now just observe, and it's contrast education for me, like what not to be, how not to act, right? Like how to elevate myself, much like your story with your captain that you experienced, right? Some of the lessons you're going to learn, the only thing you're going to get out of it maybe in the moment is that that's not how you want to be. And that's still a very, very powerful lesson, because rewind 6 months ago, before I started exploring plant medicines, that was me, you know, where I had such a short fuse. I was being horrible to everyone around me, including the cash register person, you know, who's just doing their job. And I'm, you know, frustrated with them for whatever reason. It wasn't even about them, but like I was just outwardly processing all my trauma and my emotions instead of sitting with it, observing it, and taking the lessons for what they are. So it's really interesting what the medicines will do for you when you start to listen and to observe and to look at everything, absolutely everything, a cat crossing your path, you know, a car cutting you off in the road. Everything is a lesson. It's teaching you something.
Yeah, I think paying attention to the subtleties of your environment is huge, you know, and I think we've lost touch with understanding how nature is our teacher and how we're just not listening. You know, I think for me, I was very stubborn and I wasn't listening. And so a lot of my troubles in life came from that, you know, and I think, you know, going back to like what you were talking about, like there's an expression like hurt dogs bite, and hurting people hurt people. So a lot of these things are just projections onto others, and when you change your perspective on that, you really start to understand human behavior and humanity, really, right? And a lot of it is just suppression, you know, of a lot of deep hurt, and it gives us the capacity to understand compassion for others when we can really grasp that idea or that concept, because you know we're all in this together, and we're all mirrors of each other, and we all have somewhat of a soul, right? And you know, and we can shift that within ourselves, that understanding, and kind of be less involved, you know, with our own self-righteousness to like start to really send back that behavior to others instead of being affected by it, or reverberate that vibration back, right? And I think that's a great concept to understand, right? And I think a lot of what I've learned over the years, like I'm still learning. I always see myself as a student. And I never see myself as someone who's ever mastered myself or has this ultimate poise, because I've been through every single emotion. Every single emotion I've been through to the end of what I thought was the end. And I wanted to kill myself. You know, like I thought that was the end, you know, and it was just a season of my life. And that season of me had to shed. It had to die off in order for something to be reborn. And I didn't know at the time. I thought it was just like hell. But it was just like a moment of a chapter closing for myself, you know, and I had to face it. And a lot of times people don't want to face themselves. And in the end, that's what we have to do in order if we want great change, is we really have to take that ownership in order for us to make that step forward. And I think without further into like going into plant medicine stories, like it's just, that was a part of me that I needed in that chapter of life. You know, it became a tool rather than me seeing it as an actual medicine. I was like, okay, this is actually a tool. I'm not putting all my faith in this. I actually had to look at myself and see, okay, what am I doing outside the medicine? How am I integrating this in my life? And so I took a look at my human behavior. And so I had some mentors in my life who really helped me along the way. And if I didn't have them, I would have a really hard time integrating my experiences with the medicine, because they would teach me universal law, natural order, how to understand spirituality, how to understand my thoughts, how to understand the multidimensional self. And so, you know, like I had mentioned it in our other episode, because we recorded another episode, but like you have to anchor in with a practice every single day. And that anchor is like your foundation. So when the storms come and the winds come, you don't get pushed and thrown and thrashed about as much, because your anchor is deep within. Sorry. So that anchor is so efficient when you start just digging deeper and digging deeper. And what happens is once you start digging deeper, is that's a bit of that shadow work. Things start to come up. And it's just an effort for you to take the opportunity to clear it. And that's the true essence of mastery, is you become the alchemizer of seeing something. You're like, oh, okay, I see this. Instead of becoming involved with it, you understand what it is, what it's teaching you. And if you haven't learned the lesson, you then or haven't fully integrated that experience or that emotion or that wound, it's going to keep coming back up. And so that's just how it works, because it's not going to leave until it's done teaching you something or what the lesson needs to be completed with. And so, but that anchor, as you go deeper, then you start to feel more comfortable in your skin. You start to feel more free within yourself, more liberated within your mind, because you realize your mind's just replaying things to you in a humorous way, right? And now we're just moving forward. So I think integration's huge with the plant medicine stuff, and having supporters and mentors and people, because I had mentioned it, like we heal through community, and these medicines are tribal medicines. They're done within a together communal effort, right? And I think in Peru, they speak of a community heart. If the person is the weakest person in the tribe needs help, then everyone suffers, because that person needs help and that person needs healing. So they speak of that communal heart as being so essential to the strength of the tribe. And so, you know, that's how they see life, you know, and I think we've forgotten how to see that in itself, you know.
I want to talk a little bit about self-love, because especially for men, self-love is such a hard topic, but it is something that both genders suffer with deeply. It's a human condition, you know, to suffer with self-love. And for me, going through my own healing journey, I didn't love myself at all, but you know, when I was embarking on it, and I got to a point because of plant medicines where I was able to look at my body and just start saying, thank you for bringing me this far. Thank you for fighting all of the demons you had to fight. Thank you for putting up with all of the people and situations and places you should have never been in. You know, like I started giving gratitude to my body, and that was a really deep healing practice for me. But it also, like, you know, I was also forgiving myself too for the anger that I had. You know, when I sat with the mushrooms for the first time at the military veteran retreat I went to, the facilitator, Justin, had said, you know, tell the mushrooms what you want to get out of them, you know, whisper to them exactly what you're looking for, set your intention. So for me, I was so riddled with anger, and hating myself and hating life. My intention for the mushrooms, as I whispered into them, was, please take my anger away. And they did that by helping me to love myself again. to help me remember that I was divine, and we all are, and how special I am, and how capable I am, and to love my body, and to love myself, and to love my spirit and my energy, because the anger was serving me well in terms of, while I was in defensive mode, while I was in survival mode, it was keeping everyone away from me, because I was too scared and too fearful to open up to anybody. So anger also was an emotion I had to give love and appreciation and thanks to. Thank you for keeping me safe. Thank you for, keeping everyone at bay, because I wasn't ready to have a meaningful energy exchange with anybody, right? I just wasn't in a place to do that because I was so traumatized by life. And so I want to talk about self-love with you, because I know that's a journey similar that you went on and through, to be able to love yourself fully and wholly and true and truthfully. But that's also something that everybody needs to work on, is to love and honor themselves. So how was that experience for you?
Yeah, it's a tough, loaded question, right? And I think I can answer it fully by understanding like that living through our heart space will exemplify that self-love and fully integrate what that means to us. And so, if we live in our hearts, we're having the capacity to through intuition, right? And through understanding things beyond the logical mind. And, through those really powerful emotions like gratitude, that's just one version of how we live in our heart, and I think unconditional love is really powerful, because love has no condition, has no bounds. And so a lot of people who've been raised with conditional love have a really hard time understanding what unconditional love is. And because it's never ending. And so, there's a method of what Reng Shui, he's a Qigong master. He operates through the 5 qualities of the heart, and they are gratitude, openness, unconditional love, trust, and true respect. And so those 5 things could really empower you to love yourself unconditionally. And man, if you work through 5 of those lessons through living in your heart, you could really gratify your life in so many different ways. I mean, just having respect for yourself. I mean, that's a version of self-love. If you don't respect yourself, people aren't going to respect you. So how can you love yourself if you don't have that? If you don't embody that, and having like humility, through that aspect. I remember one time I was like, just broke down crying, and through this realization I had for myself. And then afterwards, I just was busting up laughing, because I realized like through my self-respect for myself, I have the greatest humility that I would never have reached had I not had gone through what I've gone through, and I just remember that moment, and it was just a really profound experience, and this was just like a moment outside of just being myself, you know what I mean? And being real with myself. One of those qualities too, like openness, like the out of those 5 qualities, openness and trust are like the hardest ones, but it challenges our self-love to move through this life with an open heart, and then also trusting things unconditionally. No matter what the outcome can be, I can trust. And trust has been referred to the key of the universe. So it allows us to really move forward in our life with it, this divine faith within, the power of who we are, that we can do anything. And I think if you instill those 5 qualities, your self-love practice and the self-love idea and concept of how you can be is through the heart, and I think we've just lost touch of that empowerment through humanity, and I just really want to instill like that piece of the puzzle, right? Like when you speak to like a Zen master, you ask them like, what's the key to your enlightenment? They usually point to their chest and they call it the sin, SIHN, and it means to living in your heart. It's a heart-based consciousness. And these masters have gone through their forms of enlightenment, and they've ended up at their heart, because that's where the real work comes. And that's where most of our suffering comes from as well. And so if we can kind of pick apart, why we're not living there, a lot of it is protection, especially with men. Men if men have gone through hurt, they'll hold those grudges to the grave, and that those walls you put up doesn't allow you to come into compassion for other people and to connect with people emotionally. That's why I think men are not emotionally open, because of that reason, because of those walls, right? And all of us have them, like through deep hurt in life. You know, this life sucks sometimes, you know, and we get hurt and we want to protect ourselves so it doesn't happen again. It's only natural. It's a natural protection mechanism that has put our survival primal nature to enable ourselves to move forward. But it doesn't serve us throughout the rest of our life when we have kids, when we're engaged in relationship. Because I'll tell you what, relationships are one of the hardest things in this life you'll ever encounter.
You know what I look at? It's been kind of like a freeing thought for me to look at every single person as when they come to the earth and, you know, they're a baby, they're gifted this invisible bag. And in this invisible bag is all the lessons they're going to learn in this life. And they're all unique. And every single baby gets one. It doesn't matter where you're born, who you were born to, what you were, you know, born into in terms of like wealth or anything like that. Y'all get a different bag. It's a mixed bag of lessons that you're going to learn. And truly, everybody is going through their own journey of gaining in wisdom in some way, shape, or form. Everybody, every single person you can imagine. So I now am in this newfound state of grace, where when I'm interacting with someone, I'm looking at them as an observer, but also like, what are they teaching me? And what space can I hold for them? So if someone's angry in front of me, old Amy would have been like, oh, you're showing your chest? Let me get out of my car. I'm going to show my chest too. We can fight. Let's go to blows, right? Like that was old Amy. New Amy is, let me hold space for you. How are you? You're obviously not doing great. How can I help you? Like, do you just need to get it out? Do you need to vent? Do you need to have me observe and you're just doing your thing? You're displaying your emotions, you're peacocking and you need to go. Whatever it is that you need to do it and do it fully and authentically. Because I think the sad thing about Western society is, let's say that we've got a police officer who is suffering with anger issues, alcoholism, obviously struggling, and yet they're still clocking in, they're doing their shifts, they're just, you know, being beaten every single shift, right? We look at those people as bad because they're angry with their wives or their kids, right? We look at that as shameful behavior. And we berate them, and we as a society, we're like, that guy shouldn't be a cop, right? Like we're really angry back towards that individual, where what that individual really needs is a true release of that trauma. They need a timeout. They need to do maybe like a healing retreat or something like that, where they're able to like process those emotions out. They need to feel through those angry emotions. They need to like allow their body, which is a topic we'll get into here in a moment with your human garage. They really need to allow their body to do what it needs to do to get out the trauma and that negative energy and that big stored energy, right? Like I almost don't even want to call it negative energy because it's just energy, and it just transpires. It communicates in certain ways when people have it built up and they're not processing it correctly. So for me now, I'm in this beautiful place where I'm holding space for those individuals. Like you're demonstrating, without actually doing it, you're waving a big red flag that you need help. You really need help. And so instead of looking at those people negatively, now it's like, you're waving a flag. I'm here to be a lighthouse for you. How can I help you? How can I serve you? Because I wish someone would have done that for me. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I wish someone would have come up to me, put their arms around me and said, Amy, I see you. I can tell you're suffering. You're going to be okay. Let me walk you to the path of healing. And that's where I'm at right now. That's why I have the show, is because I want to be like lighthouse over here. I am a lighthouse for you. I am a North Star for you. If you're struggling, if you're having a hard time, let me wave the white flag so viciously high and aggressively for you that I want you to come here with your trauma. I want you to come here with your pain. I want you to be authentic. I want you to process it, and let me show you how. And so I wanted to have you on the show because you have uniquely bridged these worlds. You know, you're in this incredibly male dominated space where you're the hero, right? You are truly a hero, and you not only save lives, but you go into the darkest places of our society. You're on the Skid Row, right? Like you're going to these terrible pits where no one else wants to go, and you're absorbing all of that trauma. And so, but you've also now figured out how to process it in a beautiful way, in a healthy way. You've become a lighthouse for others around you to do so as well. So tell me about the Human Garage. I would love to, learn more.
Yeah. And just to piggyback off what you're saying, like lights will find other lights. And if you illuminate yourself in that way, it causes a ripple effect within the quantum field, you know, and if you start to understand how that works, you know, it's just your change enables someone else to change, and it enables someone to feel safe in order to change. Because if you show up with aggression and anger, it's not going to make someone feel open enough to come to you for help, right? And one of my really good friends, he told me like, hey, you know what, John, like PTSD is just unprocessed grief. And underneath all those other emotions that are meant to protect you, grief is lying underneath it all. And it's very, very true. And that kind of leads and segues into what Human Garage offers. And Human Garage kind of fell into my path. Actually, when I was following this guy called the Certified Health Nut on Instagram, and he was at a Iboga retreat, and Human Garage was at that Iboga retreat. And that's when I actually came upon the path of Iboga, which is a really powerful, it's the most powerful of all master plant medicines. And I can only really thank Iboga, because Iboga works in mysterious ways, that I came across Human Garage. But Human Garage is a movement for people to transform trauma themselves. Like I had mentioned, you can only heal yourself. And so there's a group of people, and primarily one of them is Gary, who was one of the co-founders of Human Garage. And he healed himself after years of being sick and in chronic pain, finding out this method of maneuvering the fascia of the body. And the way he understands fascia is that, we talked about that book, The Body Keeps the Score, right? And he believes that the body holds trauma in the fascia of the body because the fascia is encasing everything. It's encasing the organs, it's encasing your bone structure, your skeleton, your spinal cord, your nervous system. And it has everything wrapped around it. And all it is just a zip file. And once you unlock that zip file, you will unlock the blockage. And all pain is just lack of movement. So as soon as you undo the stuck fascia in the body, now you have no pain. Some people may need more of it because they have a lot of trauma in their life. And a lot of it too is also your mineral intake along with hydration. Because just drinking a ton of water is actually going to dilute you from your minerals. So you want to have great mineral intake. So that's one of the big things Human Garage talks about, is understanding mineral intake with hydration, and along the lines with that, understanding the fascia of the body. So it's a series of getting the body first out of stress. And so if anyone's listening, you can do the 15-minute stress reset, and all their videos are on YouTube for free. And their biggest thing too is like everything's for free. You can go on all their stuff. If you have issues with your upper body, you can do the upper body reset. If you have issues with your lower body, like I did, you do the lower body reset. Because I had a ton of chronic pain for years with just injuries, just being on this gruesome physical job and not sleeping and being stressed out. It's just inevitable. I can do all the plant medicine in the world, all the Kambo in the world, but I'm still going to have stress. I work in a career where I'm just getting pounded with calls, getting my teeth kicked in where I'm not sleeping. So I have to find a practice that enables me to get my body out of stress. So if you do that 15-minute stress reset, it decompresses the spine, and it also helps your fascia twist in different ways that it actually starts to magnetize your energies of your bodies, the ley lines of your body, the meridians, and the energy systems of the body to kind of unwind. And so it's unwinding the information in your body and your fascia to kind of release in a way. It's a lot of it is breath. So you're doing deep breath exercises. And one of them is like breathing in through your mouth and breathing in through your nose, doing negative pressure. And so it's really, really profound practice. And it really ignited me into embodying myself. And I have a hard time releasing emotions. The only other times I release emotions is through Kambo, when I'm in a Kambo session. Mm-hmm. And even that took me a long time because I was protecting myself. I put so many walls up in order for me to just to feel like I'm operating in a safe manner, which is false. But Kambo broke those walls for me to actually feel my emotions. And so Human Garage was another method that got me to feel my emotions because it was releasing whatever was trapped in my body. So a lot of times in the hips carry basically a ton of emotion. And so anytime you're doing Human Garage and you're doing anything with the hips, you'll have a big emotional release. And so their biggest thing is that, we have to heal with community. So when you have multiple people touching you, your body, it makes you feel safer. And so you're able to process easier. It's a really profound somatic release where you're able to just let go And one of the biggest thing is that you're putting your body into these fetal positions or semi-fetal positions of the body, to where, when you see a pitcher on the baseball team, that he's going into a fetal position, he puts his leg up and he's able to release a ton of power. The same thing is when you're in a fetal position in human garage, you're unleashing a ton of power, stuck emotion and energy that you're unable to release if you're not in that position. And also along the lines of the fetal position, we're in that position for 9 months as we're in the fetus, right? When we're in the womb, and we're in the safest form of how we're brought into this earth. And so that position is super, super powerful. And you can go into a huge rabbit hole with human garage. I really stuck with it. I did all the training, and now I host events to help people transform trauma from their body. I go to rehab centers for firefighters to help them with human garage, and it's been really, really beautiful. But yeah, you can do your own research with it if anyone's listening, and it's a really great experience. And they teach everything. They teach about what I mentioned about your mineral intake. They teach about, just toxins they put in food and things like that. It's really a great program.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And I
sure.
definitely, myself, I'm curious, like as I go through these episodes that I've been shooting with all of the people I've been having on the show, it's kind of selfish in a good way. Cause I'm like, I want to learn from me. This is a lifelong journey now to unwind the 35 years of trauma that I accumulated. And so it's actually serendipitous in terms of timing. I went through my first plant medicine ceremony the week of my 35th birthday. And part of the gift that I was given wisdom wise from the medicine was that your life's about to change. And so my new life now heading into my new journey is to unwind all of that. So I've been trying all these different healing modalities. So like Kambo and I'm going to try the human garage, and we'll do a session with that, and
Cool.
some of the other plant medicines as well. But yeah, I'm so eager to try all of these things. And
When was your birthday?
August 31st.
Oh, okay. So you're a Virgo?
Virgo, yeah.
Oh, okay. That's why you're defensive.
Oh,
Virgos
yeah.
are so defensive.
Yeah, they are. It's funny you say that, because like people would say that to me and I would be like, no, I'm not, because I'm defensive, right? No, I'm not. And then I got this birthday book, and the birthday book is like every single day of the year, and it describes what your personality is based on the day of your birth. And so I flipped to mine, and of course I'm feverishly reading. First thing, it's like, you are extremely defensive. And I'm like, damn it, you're right. You're right. So yeah, I've been learning a lot about astrology as well.
Yeah, I'm turning 35 this month, actually. Yeah, I'm a Capricorn. So
I'm still learning. You have to tell me what is Capricorn's qualities.
Capricorn. So there's 4 cardinal signs. Capricorn's one of the cardinal signs, meaning they're not like the master signs, but I would say like the parents of the elemental signs of astrology. And Capricorn's one of them. Aries is another. And so, I would say you break down some of these astrological signs through elements, right? Mm-hmm. And Virgo is an earth sign, so you would be more grounded than others, right? Because you're dealing with earth. So Capricorns are very grounded, but very stubborn. It's interesting because Capricorns, the archetype is like a goat with a flipper, right? And Capricorns they are determined to climb the mountain, but they have to climb it with a flipper, right? So it's like kind of a counterintuitive thing, but as the goat climbs that mountaintop. But I think it's usually very grounded, very centered, but also very reliable. And usually Capricorns are very stubborn at the same time. That's where my stubbornness comes from. And I think, I think you eat the meat, spit out the bones with some of these things, right? If it resonates with you, then cool. But I saw it was part of my blueprint, and I just to understand myself more and to always seek deeper within, it started to show me different things and understandings of my sign, my makeup, and it kind of shows me like your toxic behaviors that you're naturally prone to, and then also your gifts that you're naturally prone to, and it kind of enables you to guide yourself down the path you want to choose, right? Because it's all about choice.
A lot of people, especially in LA, there's like a running, this mockery of astrology. Like there's memes that circle the internet as an example where there's a particular screenshot I'm thinking of where this son had reached out to his mom and been like, hey mom, what time am I born? And the mom responds with, break up with her right now.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's all these like silly monikers that are out there making fun of astrology. However, bear with me here on the hoo-ha front. if you actually dig into astrology, which I'm newly doing so, and you really take it seriously and you go down the rabbit hole to inquire, like instead of just blowing it off, like, oh, it's nonsense. Why is it so popular? Like there's a reason for that. And it's not just because it's popular today. Astrology, for those of you listening, has been around since the dawn of time. Like if you look at where things are in the world, as an example, the pyramids around the world, and I say around the world because pyramids do not just exist only in Egypt, they're around the world. They're perfectly aligned with the star systems. And this is before, allegedly, that we even had technology to like satellites and, you know, all of these fancy tools and systems that we have now to like map these things. And astrology has been used in healing medicine practices, in fortune telling, and, you know, in decision making, right? Like a lot of like the Aztecs as an example, and the Mayans, and all of these indigenous cultures have used astrology as a huge part of their cultures for as far back as anyone can remember. So there's something to astrology, and it's really telling. I cannot begin to describe to you the accuracy of mine. And it's not me just like trying to even identify with anything. It's legit. Like as I go through it, it's like, you have a problem with perfectionism, and it's true. It's so true. Like I need things to be perfect. And so that's something that's for me a shadow. You know, it's not like, I don't view that as a good quality. I view that as work that I need to do on myself, that it's okay not to be perfect. Right. So I look at astrology now as kind of a guideline of like, if to your point, if it resonates and if it's something that's a pattern for me, this could be a helpful mirror of my own behaviors, of things I need to work on or improve on or look at.
Yeah, I mean, like they're ancient teachings, you know, and I think if we ignore and avoid ancient teachings, it takes away the knowledge and wisdom that it offers to us, you know, especially from you know, ancient wisdom cultures. You know, they always understood that we're all connected to everything. You know, we're not less than or more than nature in itself. You know, that includes the stars and the planets. And, you know, so they were able to map out you know, planets and understand our connection to them and its divinity in itself. And I think it's really profound if you just get outside of your self-righteousness to understand how beautiful that is. You can now be more open to understand the wisdom it offers, you know, and I think there's always shifts and changes within the universe that we're unaware of. I mean, there's been through Vedic astrology, there's this 26,000 year cycle that is ended right now, meaning that there is basically, they had called it more of like a quarantine of consciousness because our planet has entered a different part of the Milky Way in order for us to actually have transformation of consciousness. And they believe that that's happening at this moment right now. And I think that's huge. And if you go do plant medicine, the plant medicines will actually teach you about your connection to the planets and your connection to the stars. Even more so with interaction with higher dimensional beings, which I've had experiences with in plant medicine, where I had understood my I guess my star lineage per se, and what planet my lineage came from is pretty interesting, and being exposed to that. That's really far-fetched, but that was a direct experience I had, you know, and even having like my unborn children come to me and their souls come to me inside the medicine as well, which is really profound. And it's crazy because, you know, we are threatened by things we don't understand because of our ignorance. We choose to project onto what we don't believe to happen or believe to be instilled within our nature. But I think we're shifting outside of that perspective now to really understand how powerful we are, how powerful we're connected. And, you know, I think if we don't understand that, we can't understand our health. We can't understand our makeup, you know, because even our organs are related to emotions. They're related to how we relate to seasons. You know, like in Vedic medicine and Chinese medicine, they talk about the seasons. You shouldn't eat certain foods because of how things operate, you know? So I think we've just lost touch with this greater intelligence with how we're supposed to be. And instead of that, we just have it so easy. We go to the grocery store and we just get whatever we want. And we just can just look at our phone and get whatever we need, right? And it's just, I think we've just lost so much value in how we just integrate within this world. And if we go back to the ancient cultures, you know, they really taught because they were, it was like, you know, fight or flight. And if they don't survive within this environment, then you're going to die. And so they had to really integrate themselves within the forest, within nature, or else, they weren't going to survive and their children weren't going to survive. And that's what's really profound too, is that I think these plant medicines came out of the most intense regions of this planet, right? You got ayahuasca coming from the rainforest in South America. And what do you have in South America? Like a ton of jaguars and anacondas and crocodiles. Like there is no other way you're going to survive unless you really come in tune to what this region is teaching you, right? And these plant medicines were able to teach them how to find other herbs and spices to heal from malaria or whatever. And you got Iboga coming from Africa. And it's just, how do you survive during a drought and how to find food? And these medicines taught these tribes how to survive within these seasons, within the environment they're living in. And it became the medicine and the greatest teacher of how they were able to inhabit themselves and take their lineages to the next level.
I think of, as you were talking about that, like I was getting goosebumps because it's so true. I've never thought about it that way. Like ayahuasca, for those of you who aren't familiar, like it's known as vine of the soul. And then, Iboga, like I just think about, I just recently had a woman on the show who shared her journey going and sitting with the Bwiti tribe and learning all about their culture, their way of life, and sitting with Iboga directly and having ceremony with them. And she was talking about the fierce warrior nature of the women in the tribes and how it's very much so a matriarchy. And but these are not your typical women. They're like very warrior energy, warrior spirits. It's really interesting the different essences, the spirits of the medicines and how they come through in practice. I haven't sat with Iboga myself yet. That's on my dream list, but very much so does that resonate for ayahuasca when I just sat with that recently.
Yeah, there's a saying that ayahuasca will help you win the race, but Iboga gets you across the finish line. And I think having to be experienced Iboga myself, that medicine's known to be as the grandfather or the godfather of all plant medicines for a reason, because it's also known to have two spirits, masculine and feminine. And it is a warrior medicine. It is not for the faint of heart, because it is that medicine shook me to my core, to where I had to face what I was doing to myself, and it really. Even afterwards, the spirit of Iboga will stay with you for up to 6 months to a year. And I really felt that, and it basically took me to the point of seeing, I have the power to create good and bad, and I choose to create mostly bad. And this is after, doing, a long session, sitting with ayahuasca 17 times. And Iboga was able, really cranking down on hey, let's figure this out. You are just basically, causing so much pain for yourself, and showed me my biggest fear and made me face it, kept shoving my face in it until I got the point. And, my first experience with plant medicine, it showed me that I have the spirit of the jaguar within me. It's dormant within me. And that animal has always been an archetype that has been myself since I was born, basically. And every single plant medicine experience that showed me that animal. And then in Iboga, it basically made me find that power within, how to find that power of the jaguar and bring it out. And until I was able to do that, to let go. And finally, I was like, okay, now you know what to do. This is how you face your fears. This is how you get past the obstacles in life. That power you just pulled out right now is what you need to move forward. And it was a really profound, powerful experience. And I'll never forget it, because it was life-changing, without a doubt.
Well, I thank you so much for even just walking us through what you've walked us through so far. I mean, just pulling the curtain back for me is a really important mission, so that we can share these successful healing modalities that are alternative to what Western medicine currently offers for veterans and first responders, especially. We need to be able to offer hope to military veterans and first responders in a way that is just not available today. And so sharing these stories is so powerful. There's a couple questions I ask every single guest when they come on the show. One is, if someone's in crisis right now that's listening to this episode that is feeling like they want to end their lives, what's one piece of advice you would give them this moment that's actionable right away that they can go out and do right now, or where they're at, to help them shift their mindset on that?
Man, that's a tough one. There's a practice. It's called sitting with it. And sometimes you have to sit with it. Sometimes there's no help out there, and there's nothing that's going to take the pain away. Sometimes you have to be in it in order to transform, because that gives you the opportunity to face yourself. And you have to just understand that it's not the end. However, there is an opportunity of growth here to pull yourself out of the suffering you've caused for yourself. Because in the end, we've had an impact in causing our own suffering, and we have to take that ownership. Unless we take that ownership, nothing will change. And sometimes you have to be in it. It's just how it works. And, I think when you trust the fact that you're more powerful than the thoughts and the emotions that are coming through, you get to gratify yourself and ignite yourself into realizing, hey, this is not the end. And I am more powerful than these thoughts, because they're just lies. And you have to come to an understanding with that. And you only come to an understanding with that sometimes when we hit rock bottom. And sometimes we're so stubborn, and myself included, to where we have to hit rock bottom in order for us to have that transformative moment. And most of my transformative moments have been just in sobriety. And I think a lot of it is just taking a look at ourselves internally and seeing what serves us, what doesn't. And taking that inventory, that's a first step into that self-empowerment and getting yourself out of that hole you put yourself in. So I would say sometimes taking that inventory is the best thing you can do. You're like, hey man, I'm tired of being sick. Okay, what can I do right now to inhabit this growth? And what needs to exit my life right now in order for me to do that? What's hindering me from enabling my self-empowerment? And I think that's really helpful. I think Kambo is really a beautiful medicine to help through suicide ideation. I think Human Garage is really beautiful. You can do that on your own, and that's when you start to empower yourself. You're doing your own healing. You know what I mean? But I would say the biggest thing too is surrounding yourself by people who are going to support you. You can't do this alone. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a really good advice.
Beautiful advice. Is there any charity organizations that you want to shout out?
Damn, charity organizations? That's tough. I've kind of lost touch with charity organizations unless I'm fully involved with them, because I don't know sometimes if it's right, and if there's integrity involved with it. So I'm not involved with any right now that I know for sure, hey, this is a good and integral approach towards helping, especially like first responders and veterans. I mentioned No Fallen Heroes has been really great, but the thing is sometimes you don't get an immediate response, right? I know for our own department, we have programs set in place. So if you need help right away, I know how to get that for you, but it's only if you're working for our department. So that's tough. I don't really know how to answer that one. I don't really know for sure.
Well, no worries. No worries. I just always ask, because if there's an opportunity to shout one out, I like to. And then where can people find you and reach out to work with you?
Yeah, so go on Grablives_podcast, and there's like a link tree there. You can look up like the podcast platform on like YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes, and you can listen to like so many different episodes about like men's mental health too is huge for that podcast. Talking from like addiction to suicide ideation, hearing people's stories, to plant medicine, to gut health and all these things. Human Garage. It's really amazing, but you can message that Instagram platform if you're interested in Kambo, if you're interested in doing Human Garage, if you live in the Southern California region, and also conscious work is huge that I offer. If you're interested in like understanding how consciousness works, I do phone calls, and if you need help just to talk to someone, I'm a peer supporter. So what that means is if you're a first responder, I'm nationwide accredited to help people as a peer supporter. So if you're a firefighter dealing with a serious call that you had to deal with, I'm there to kind of help you integrate the critical incident. And so critical incident debriefing is huge. And so I am a peer supporter. So if you need help with that, it's designed for your own people to help you, because they're the only people who understand. Sometimes therapists, they don't have the cultural competency to grasp what you're dealing with, but peer support is, and it is free. And like, I just make a phone call and ask for help. And And if you're in Southern California, I know a lot of people, a lot of clinicians and facilities that could help you right away if you're dealing with that suicide ideation, if you think it's the end with your addiction and stuff like that. I know places that, you don't even have to worry about your insurance or if you're going to cover it, and your shifts, if they're going to get covered, you don't have to worry about any of that shit. They'll just handle it for you. So I think, if you just reach out, that's the first step, is reaching out to someone when you need help. So you can just message me and ask, about anything really.
Yeah, I think that's so important. It also circles back to on your point about just the power of community, and going back to those indigenous tribes that I really love to talk about, because it's true. When someone's lost in the community, they rally around them. And, all you have to do is ask for what you need. And I know that's sometimes the hardest thing to do for someone struggling, especially when they're at the rock bottom point that they are, where they're wanting to end their lives. Like, the last thing they want to do is ask for help, but really truly find someone that you feel safe to ask for help from, even if that's a stranger, like reaching out to you. I know that you'd be so willing, and same with me. The offer is always out there. Send me a DM to my Instagram and I will happily help you. So thank you so much for spending the time on the show today. I can't wait to do this again sometime. I feel like we could just go on forever and ever about astrology and spirituality and plant medicine and more. And we will do it again. So thank you so much. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, Amy, totally. Thank you so much.